Okay? Okay, thank you. In einem Tag seinen angekommen kein Pilitz zu Fuß, a Mann und a Weib, beide mit Säck auf die Places und mit Peck in the hand. So on a certain day, on a specific day, there arrived in Pilitz on foot a man and his wife, uh, both of them with sacks on their backs and bundles in their hands. Jeden seinen Ahois und die Klemme von der Kremlech und die Voucheten abgebeten, abgeben dem Fremden Shalom Aleichem. So Jews came out of their stores and their workshops to greet the young couple with Shalom Aleichem. Der Mann ist gewesen hoch, right, mit blaue Augen und ein bräuner Bord. The man was tall, broad, with blue eyes and a brown beard. Die Frau hat getragen a Kopftuch. The woman was wearing a head covering. Sie hat ausgeguckt, hübsche Jünger von Mann, ähnlich zu a Goya. She looked quite a bit younger than the man and similar to a non-Jewish woman. Der Mann hat sich gerufen Yankov. The man was called Yankov. Hat ihn gefragt, von wann kommt, und hat angerufen a weite Stadt. They asked him where he hailed from, where he came from, and he mentioned a town that was far away. Weibel seinen Ahois aufnehmen das junge Weibel. The women came out to receive the young wife, aber es hat sich herausgewiesen, als sie ist a Stummel. But it was revealed that she was a mute. Hat sich in Anheim gechidischt, was vornehmer Mannsbild soll Chassene haben mit der Stummel. It was a bit astonishing to people that in the beginning that such a, I guess, attractive, nice-looking man would marry a mute person. Aber zurückgeschmust, but thinking of it again, undoubtedly talking about it again, was ist der Chiddush? What's the big surprise? Sie wogen wären geschlossen in Himmel. Partnerships are set up in heaven. Yaakov hat gesagt, als sein Weib heißt Sarah. Yaakov said that his wife was named Sarah. Und hat ihr bald einen Namen getan. Right away, they gave her a name, the stumme Sarah, the mute Sarah. Jeden haben gefragt, Jakobin, sie ist nicht einmal a ben Teure. People asked Yaakov whether he had not been a Torah student, weil hat gesucht in Pilitz am Lamed von die Kinder und Jakob hat noch quentlich nicht geentfüllt. They were looking for a teacher for the children in Pilitz, and Yaakov, after a little bit of hesitation, answered, a parsha chumash konich. A parsha of chumash I know. Das ist genug. That's sufficient. That's sufficient. Es ist gewähnt Sommerzeit zwischen Pesach and Shavuos. It was summertime between Shavuot and Pesach, or Pesach and Shavuot. Er hat abgegeben Jakobin und sein Sturmweib, a Stub, und es ist bald geworden a cheder. They gave Yaakov and his mute wife a house, and it immediately became a cheder for children. Gehilz is Volvo in Pilitz. Wood was quite cheap in Pilitz, while the Poritz, Pilitsky, had vermocht a Sachval because the Poritz, Adam, owned a lot of woods, Mir hat zugesucht Jakobin, als oib das Melamdut seins vet gerotten. They told Yaakov that if his teaching was successful, vet men im oifstellen ahois, that they were going to build a house for him. Mir hat gegeben Jakobin a Tisch, a Schmeiß, Benkel, und a Riemen. This is equipment. They gave him a table, and I guess a table for a place for giving. A stool, a benkel, a stool for giving whippings, and a leather strap. Hat sich allein ausgeschnitzt a title und auf a Teufel aufgeschrieben mit gechivichter osios dem Aleph base. He himself had whittled a pointer and on a board he had written with nice big legible letters the Aleph bet. Drov Talmidim seinen Gewein dartike Kinder. Most of his students were the children of the first level of the Cheder. Yaakov is gesessen mit sie in Dreußen unter dem Schatten von einem Baum. Yaakov sat with them outside under the shadow of a tree. Warum seinen gelegen Kletzer und Bretter, weil mir hat da gehalten in Boyen. I would have thought he would have said in ein Boyen, but okay. Everywhere there were planks of wood and boards because they were continually building in this town. Yaakov had gelernt die Kinder.
No, there's a difference between halten in ein and halten in. Halten in ein is continually, as you translate it, but halten in means they were currently at the point of building.
Okay, they were building. Gehalten in building. They were building now. Yaakov had gelernt die Kinder Aleph Beis, halb traf, Ivri, jeden Leut sein älter und kennt nicht. He taught the children. It was done in a very strict sequence. He taught them the Aleph Beis, then he taught them the syllables, the half syllables, the sentences, the Hebrew, each one according to his age and his capability, his knowledge, almost a Masorti, very advanced approach here. Die Kinder haben sich gespielt auf de Kletzer und Bretter, gemacht Heudelke, gebeut von Spenner Stibbelech, gegroben Griblech. Yeah. The children played with the boards and the planks. They made a swing. They built from the little chips of wood. They built houses and they dug holes. Kein Eltern haben euch geschickt in Cheder rein, Seere Techterlech. Some of the parents sent to this cheder their daughters, weil es ist dort nicht gewesen, kein Rebbetzin, was geht lernen mit Mädlach, davenen und schreiben a Schuhgrissel. They sent them there because there was not a Rebbetzin, a female teacher in the town, who was going to learn with the girls, teach the girls how to daven, how to pray, and how to, these were these letters, these model letters, and they would copy the letters and they'd learn how to write that way. The Mädlach haben gemacht Babkas von Eld. The girls were making babkas, let's see, what would you call that? Like loaf cakes from earth. Gesungen Liedlech, they sang songs. Getanzt Roder, der Nana Ashene Panne. I don't know what that means. They made these cakes from the earth. They sang songs and they danced. Rudda, I think, is a circle. I don't know what that means, Ashena Panne. Maybe bring me a nice husband.
Something like that. Panne,
yeah.
It means
Panne
person.
And Shana is nice, handsome.
Yeah.
And so bring me a nice husband. Bring me a nice husband. Make me a dream. A Yingla is Kolomersch gesessen, is gewähnt der Mann. The boy apparently was the man. Is a weg daven, and he went to daven. He went to pray. This vibe, that is the girl, hat ihm abgekocht, auf a Scherbele das Nachmol. The wife, that is this little girl, had cooked for him on a little piece of pottery his night meal. Das Brot is gewähnt a Rindelkora, the bread. This is in this imaginary world that they played in. They didn't need Lego. The bread was a piece or a cutting of bark. The grits, blotter, the grits, the cereal or the grain was mud. Das Fleisch, a shishka. And the meat was a pine cone. Yaakov had gehat ergetz, weggelegt dem Riemen. Yaakov had somewhere, not laid away, but had forgotten. Set aside. He had set aside this little leather strap. He wasn't using that method of teaching. Hat nicht geschmissen, die Kinder, und fiel auf sie nicht angeschrien. He didn't hit the children, and he didn't even yell at them. Hat sie mit Liebschaft gekneipt die Bäcklach. With love, he pinched their cheeks and gekuscht in die Kepler and kissed them in their heads. Die dosige Kinder seien schon alle geboren noch in Kurden. All of these children had been born after the Churban of the Harmoniski massacre. The Städtel hat gleich bekommen Jakobin und man hat bedeutet, was hat nebig, a stum vibe. The Städtel had immediately loved this Yaakov, and they felt sorry that he had a mute wife. Zwar, sie hat sich gefühlt Yiddish. Was true that she behaved in a Jewish fashion. Gegangen in mikvah, she went to the mikvah. Geweiht Fleisch, she what was the thing that my mother used to do? She would soak the meat, gesalzen Fleisch. She would put the salt on the flesh, on the meat. Zugegrate Freitag cholent. She prepared a cholent on Friday. Genommen challah. She took the challah the way she was supposed to, and gebenchlich, and lit the candles. Shabbos sie gestanden in Weiberschule mit Asidio, and on Shabbos she stood in the women's section with the Siddur, und die Lippen ihrer haben sich geschockelt, and her lips were moving. A Stegel, die sie wollte gedacht. In the manner, apparently, that she was davening. Aber Taimul hat sie abgetan Sachen, was passen nicht für a Weib von einem Malamed. But sometimes she did things which wouldn't pass for the behavior, for the wife of a teacher. Sie hat ausgetun die Schicht und hat herumgefletschert Borvis. She would take off her shoes and she would run around barefoot. Wenn etwas hat geweckt in ihr Gelächter, when something brought forth laughter from her, hat sie sich herzig gelacht und gewissen amol weiße Zähne on a sprinkler, and she would give out a very hearty laugh, and she would reveal a mouth with white teeth without any stains. This was certainly not a Jewish mouth. Hinter dem Haus hat die stumme Sarah zugraben a Beit und versetzt Grinsen. Behind the house, the mute Sarah had dug out a garden, and she had planted greens. Sie hat gearbeitet mit der Genitschaft von a Poilte. She worked with the experience and of a peasant. Gehackt Holz. She cracked, she chopped wood. Getrogen Wasser, carried water. Gegangen zum Teich, waschen Gretz. And she went to the river to wash the laundry. Gret, not Gretz, Gret. Wenn sie ist fertig geworden mit der eigenen Wäsche, when she finished with her own wash, hat sie geholfen die Weiber, was haben kleine Kinder. She would help the women that had small children. Sie hat für jeden eine gearbeitet sich. She worked for all of them free of charge. Sie hat in sich gehabt ein äußerliche Gewohre. She had in herself just an outstanding courage. Einmal hat sie sich für die Weiber ausgetan, mutternacket. One time, in front of the women, she had taken off her clothes. She was completely naked, und sich gelost schwimmen in Teich, and allowed herself to swim in the river. Die Weiber haben aufgehoben a Geschrei. The women began to scream. Keiner von sie hat nicht gekonnt schwimmen. None of them could swim. Mir hat Meure gehabt, die Stumme soll nicht werden ertrunken. Dort, wo das Wasser dreht sich in a Gewirbel. They had fear. It was feared that the mute one would be drowned in the place where the water turned in a what was this?
Whirlpool.
A whirlpool. Aber die stumme Sarah ist durchgeschwommen, das gefahrliche Ort unpachet. But the mute Sarah swam through this swirling earth without fear. The Weiber haben gestaunt. The women were astonished. Stummel Chaye, mute animal. We'll stop there. Thank you.
Wenn man hat dann geholfen bauen für Yankov in das Haus, when they began to build Yankov a house, hat Pilitz gehabt von was zu reden. Pilitz, the town, had something to talk about. Sei Yankov und sei Sarah haben geholfen in bauen. Both Yaakov and Sarah helped the construction. Sarah is schon gewähnt tragedick. Sarah was already pregnant. Sie hat aufgehört gehen Tefillah, and she had stopped going to the mikveh. Aber sie hat geschleppt Bretter und Kletzer wie ein Mannspiel. But she would drag boards and timber like a man. Yankov hat allein ausgehackt für sich die Bäume im Wald. Yankov chopped down for himself the trees in the forest. Sie herumgeschnitzt mit der Hack. He trimmed them with the hatchet. Gebracht zu schleppen in Städtlereien. And he brought them dragging into the town. Karl hat nicht gedarft ausgeben kein Perute auf dem Gebäude. The community didn't have to spend a single cent for the construction. Bislichweis hat sich herausgewiesen, slowly it appeared, as der Yankov kann mehr Jiddischkeit, wie man hat gemeint. The Yankov was more versed in Jewish subjects than they had thought. Der Balkoire is geworden Heserik. The Torah reader had become hoarse. Und Yankov hat Shabbos gelernt von Sefer. And Yankov on that Shabbos read out from the scroll. A paar Mal hat man ihm gehabt des Medrash reingucken in der Gemara. A few times they had caught him in the study hall looking into the Talmud. Beim Davenen is gestanden in a Winkel. While praying, he would stand in a corner, eingehielt in Talis, covered in his Talis, sich frum geschockelt, swaying piously. Von Mal zu Mal hat sich herausgerissen von ihm a stiller Sifts. From time to time, a silent sigh would rip out of him. Well, it would be emitted. Hat wenig erzählt wegen sich. He told very little about himself. Aber man hat herausgedrungen, but people were able to figure out, als hat verloren die Mishpacha, that he had lost his family. Hat mistome gehabt früher Weibe mit Kinder. Most likely he had previously had a wife and children. Aber jedes Mal, was man hat ihm gewollt reinziehen in a Schmus, but every time that they tried to draw him into a conversation, hat sich etwas wie abgeschockelt, geteinet. He somehow shrugged it off, and he argued, was ist gewesen, ist gewesen. What happened has happened. Man muss anheben als von Snai. You've got to begin everything anew. Die Mannsleid haben gehabt für ihm Abscheu. The men had a certain amount of respect for him. Die Weiber haben ihm lieb gehabt. The women loved him. Shabbos noch entschallend, wenn die Weiber sind gesessen auf der Bank vor ein Haus. Shabbos afternoon, after the meal, when the women were sitting on the bench in front of the house, hat man gerät derwegen. They would speak about this, as die Stumme hat mehr Mazel wie Seichel, that the mute wife was more lucky than clever. Emes, sie is a junge, a schöne, und a gesundstick. Well, true, she is young, she is pretty, and she is healthy. Aber was hat der Mann von a stumm Weib? But what does a man get out of having a mute wife? A mansbill will schmusen mit der Weib. A man wants to chat with his wife, fragen bei ihrer Netze, and to ask for advice from her. Nu, und was wird sein, wenn das Kind wird, Chalila, reingeraten in der Mutter? And what will happen if, God forbid, the child takes after his mother? Stumme Mama kann einmal haben stumme Kinder. It can happen that a mute mother has mute children. Jeden, a Witzlerin hat gesagt, and one of the women who liked to tell jokes said, Amol is a stumm Weib a Meile. Well, sometimes a mute wife is an advantage. Sie versport dem zu schelten. She will never be, she can, versporen is to do without. She can do without cursing him. That's just what you say. Besser wie a blind. Well, it's better than having a blind wife. Wie nur es wird Nacht, läuft sie vermachen dem Laden, hat sich angerufen a Weibel. As soon as it becomes night, she is running to shutter the windows. One of the women called out. Was ist das für a Simon? So what do you think that means? Sie hat ihm lieb. That she's in love with him. Wer wollte ihm Feind gehabt? So who would hate him?
Who would love him?
Shabbos hat die stumme Sora angetan a Kopke, anstelle a Koptichel. On Shabbos, the silent Sora would wear a kopka instead of a koptichel. A kopka is a kind of a bonnet instead of just a kerchief. Sie hat gehabt mitgebracht mit sich von die weite Bekeimes a Kleid. She had brought along with herself from those distant places a dress mit Blimelech that had flower design, an ausgehofften Schürzel, a knitted, this is kind of a shirts. I'm not quite sure.
Is it like an apron?
Yeah, an apron, a pinafore.
Right, like a pinafore, right? Yeah.
A Porschich mit Spitzen, and a pair of shoes with tips.
I think they're like pointy. I mean,
yeah,
stylish.
That's it,
yeah.
points. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Die Jiden haben gehabt gemacht an Erev in Pilitz. The Jews had constructed an Erev around Pilitz, so it was permissible to carry things on Shabbos. Die stumme Sora hat gehalten in ein Hand a Siddur. Silent Sora would hold a prayer book in one hand, in der anderer a Nostichel, and in the other hand, a handkerchief. Die Weiber haben gerät zu ihr Stummlaschen. The women would speak to her in silent speech, in hand gestures. Aber sie hat sich kleinerisch nicht gehabt, was sie meinen. But she apparently didn't understand what they meant. Sie hat geschmeichelt und geschockelt mit dem Kopf. She would smile and she would nod. Sie hat sich weggesetzt auf a Bank. She sat herself on a bench or on a chair. Und die Lefzen ihrer haben sich bewegt. And her lips would be moving. Die Weiber haben Stillerheit getrieben aus ihr Spaß. Getrieben aus ihr Spaß. The women would silently make fun of her. Aber alle haben zugegeben, als sie hat a golden heart. But everyone admitted that she had a golden heart. Sie ist weggeworden zu schlafen. Gewor wären zu schlafen. She went to find out about those people who were ill. Sie ausgeschmiert die Glieder. She would embalm, and she would, what's the word for ausschmieren here? It doesn't sound terrible.
No, not embalm. I
Uh,
think she would put salves
yeah,
on.
she would salve. That's the right word. Her,
Yeah.
their limbs
Yeah.
mit terpentin oder akavit, either with turpentine or with strong liquor. I guess that's what they did in those days. Sie hat zugegräht Freitag, Shabbos Obst. On Friday, she would prepare fruit for Shabbos and Pamela tzimis and a kind of tzimis. Now, what is Pamela?
Oh,
Pamela
plums.
plums? Okay,
Ah,
thank you.
plums.
Plum tzimis. Par der Manns Talmidim, for her husband's students. Sie hat nur gegeben und geholfen. Bedient die Alte. She was only giving and helping, serving those who were old, die Schlafe, those who were sick, die Unbeholfene, and those who were helpless. Der eigener Bauch is geworden groß. Her own belly became large and spitzig and came to a point.
Mhm.
Die Weiber haben gemacht dem Cheshben, als sie wird während gelegen Sukkot. The women figured out, they calculated that she would give birth during Sukkot, oder a bissl später, or maybe a little bit later in Cheshvan, in the month of Cheshvan. Sukkot is in Tishrei. Cheshvan is the next month. Mach mis Stumme seinen gewöhnlich euch taub, because mute people are usually also deaf. Hat man sich nicht gehitten zu reden vor ihr. People were not careful not to speak in front of her. Sarah is gesessen beim Siddur. Sarah would sit with her prayer book, and a jeden hat so getan. And some woman would say, "Sie kann denn davenen? Does she understand the prayer? Cook via honen bnei adam." She's looking like a hen looks at the prayer of bnei adam before being shechted at the Kippur ceremony. But it's a standard expression, cooked via honen bnei adam. He has no idea what she's looking at. Efter hat man sie gelernt. Well, maybe they've taught her. Wie kann man eine Stimme auslernen? How do you go about teaching a mute person? Efter ist sie geworden stumm von Schreck. Maybe she became silent out of fear. Sie sieht nicht aus, kein Erschrockene. Well, she doesn't look like someone who's fearful. Efter haben die Rotzchen ihr ausgeschnittene Zunge. Maybe the murderers cut out her tongue. Hat geheißen, weisen die Zunge. They asked her to show her tongue. In Anheb hat sie kleinmerst nicht verstanden. At first, it's as if she didn't understand. Sie hat genommen lachen. She began to laugh. Und in beide Backen haben sich weggestellt, keingräblich. And dimples appeared in both of her cheeks. Bald hat sie herausgesteckt a rose Zunge. But soon she stuck out a pink tongue, spitzig wie Badzeug, pointed like a female dog's. Die Weiber haben sich gelacht. The women were rolling in laughter. Nimm rein dem Lecker. You can take in your liquor now. All right, that's enough for now. Maybe we'll come back around to me.
Okay. Der Vorteil, sich zu machen stumm, ist nicht gewesen Jakobs nur Wanders. The scheme to pretend to be deaf and dumb, to be not to be able to speak, wasn't Jakobs scheme, but Wandas. Sie hat allein eingesehen, als wird dauern zu lang, bis sie wird sich auslernen Jiddisch. She herself had insight that it would take too long before she would be able to learn Yiddish. Viele die jiddische Wörter, was sie hat herausgebracht seien, herausgekommen, goyisch. Even the Yiddish words that she emitted came out like a Gentile was speaking. Wanda hat in Onheb gesollt sich ausgeben für eine jüdische Tochter, was ist gewesen gefangen by the Kosaken. Wanda at first wanted to give out for sich ausgeben. She wanted to pretend for herself that she was a Jewish daughter who was caught by the Cossacks und hat dort vergessen das jüdische Loschen, and there she forgot the Yiddish language. But erstens hat sie nicht gekannt die javanische Sprache. But firstly, she didn't even know I take it the Ukrainian, Yavanish, the Ukrainian language. Secondly, hat sie nicht getäugt, auszutragen, kein Liegens. And secondly, she wasn't really very good at thinking out lies. Sie wollte gering gewesen, sie zu haben bei Widersprüchen. It would be easy to catch her out with contradictions. Nor longer Matternische und Sakonis, but long efforts and danger, weil sie ist gekommen, Deutsch drauf, für ein Rübergehen zum jüdischen Glauben, because there was sentence of death for converting to the Jewish belief. Ist Wanda gefallen auf der Eize, sie soll sich zu machen stumm. So Wanda gave herself the advice to pretend to be dumb. Manchmal hat Jakoven gekonnt in Lublin und euch in die andere Stadt, wo ist, vorbeigefahren auf dem Weg zurück von Gefangenschaft und gehalten Drosches, because they knew Yaakov in Lublin and also in the other towns that he traveled through on his way back from captivity, and he had held sermons, hat aus Porl gemusst aussuchen a verworfene Heck. The pair had to look for a very far away corner to hide. Bei Nacht, wenn die frierdicke Wanda und itzdige Sarah, at night when the previous Wanda and the current Sarah, wie es heißen alle, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Geertes, as all converted women are called by Sarah, hat verspart die Loden. She closed the, not the windows, the
Shutters.
What Yaakov gerät mit ihr Stillerheit, Yaakov spoke very quietly to her und gelernt mit ihr Jiddischkeit and taught Jiddischkeit with her, studied Yiddishkeit with her. Hat sie gehabt, ausgelernt Davenen. He had taught her how to pray und schreiben auf Yiddish Deutsch and writing in Yiddish. Hat gelernt mit ihr Chumash, Posuk, die Dinim von Shulchan Aruch. He had learned with her the Bible. The Posuk, I take it, is that interpretations, the rules of Shulchan Aruch. Erzählt meistens von der Gemara und von Midrash, and he told her stories from the Gemara and from the Midrash. Sie hat gewissen auf Fleißigkeit, was hat Jakob verblüfft. She showed an industry that really stunned Jakob. Sie hat gehabt ein gut Gedächtnis. She had a good memory und hat ihm nicht einmal gefragt, Kashas, was darauf haben sich gestellt, die Perushim von Tanach, and she set him questions that the Perushim, or the interpreters of the Tanakh, had also set themselves. Das Lernen mit Saran Torah is Yaakov ungekommen schwer. Teaching Sarah the Torah was difficult for him. Sie hat nicht getraut aufheben das Call. She couldn't raise her voice, weil Emmett hat noch gekonnt leuchten auf jener Seitwand, because someone could be eavesdropping on the other side of the wall. Jacob had ook gemoest murmelen. He, Jacob, also had to murmur, while Stimme seien taub, because those who are dumb are also deaf. Und wer wird das reden zwei Täuber, and who would go and speak to someone who is deaf? Goed dem was man hat sich man hat sich gedacht hätten für die Goyim und seine Gesetzen, besides having to be careful, guard yourself for the Gentiles and their rules. But Jacob euch sich geschrocken verrieden. He was also frightened of the Jews. Wollte immer rausgejogt von Stadt, wenn man weiß, als lebt mit der Gerete. They would have chased him out of the town if they knew that he was that he's living with a converted woman. Karl wollte gleich genommen forschen, wo, wenn und wie soll. The community would right away have started investigating where, when, and how. Wenn sie der Gericht zu die Schraubers als Aid hat opgerett a polische Tochter von christlichen Gläubigen, when it would reach the officials that a Jew has opgerett, booked away a Polish daughter from the had optreden as what's a better it's what would be a better translation for optreden
to talk someone out of something.
Yeah.
Talk her out of.
To talk her out of the Christian belief. Wollten bestraft die ganze Stadt. They would have punished the whole town und gemacht, wer weiß, was will wohl. And who knows what sort of libels they would have made from this. Die Kalochim haben nur gesucht an uns Chepenish. The priests were only looking for something to hook onto, for an excuse, basically. Jeden allein wollten mit Recht kostet gewähren, als das Weib ist rüber zur Jüdischkeit als Liebschaft für Mann. The Jews alone would correctly have suspected that the wife came over to Judaism out of love for her husband. Warum sie es nicht der Steiger an der Käfer soll sich gribbeln und in Emuna Sachen, because it was not the custom that a female should delve into matters of belief. When we wollte him, and they would, when we wollte him Jaakoven gelegt in Cherem, and they would have excommunicated Jacob. I think I could stop there. Someone else wants to have a go.
Well, Joan, it's your turn again.
No, Rafael.
Okay.
It's very late here for me. I like to hear thank
okay,
you.
Fine. Yankov had viele verheulen, als is landen. Yankov even hid the fact that he was well-versed. Weil zu Talmud Chacham is men negerik, man will wissen von wann kommt. Because for a Talmud Chacham, a student of the Talmud, or a student of someone well-versed, people would be eager to know where he came from wem stammt, who his parents might have been, mit wem hat sich mishadach gewen, and with whom he had become married. hat gehad gebracht mit sich etliche ländische Svarim. He had brought with himself several of his learned books, aber hat sie gehalten verborgen. But he kept them hidden. Magnus Holz is the Bazol, seeing as wood was cheap. Und Yankov hat allein getan die Arbeit, and Yankov had done all the work himself, hat gebaut das neue Haus mit dicke Wand. He built this new house with thick walls, und mit an alcove, un Fenster, and with an alcove that had no windows. Von draußen verstellt mit Bämer, hidden outside by trees. Als auf zu können lernen in Verborgenisch. And all that was so that he could study in secret. Allein und mit seinem geliebten Weib, by himself and with his beloved wife. Zwar, truly, hat angeheben Leben mit der Beiser. He had begun to live with her through by committing a prohibited act. Aber hat schon gehabt gestellt mit ihr a chuppah. But he had already set up with her a proper chuppah, kedas Moshe Yisrael, according to the laws of Moses in Israel. Sie hat schon geglaubt be'emunah shlema in God. At this point, she believed with full belief in God, in der Torah, in the Torah, abgehit jeden din, and she was careful about every law. Von Mal zu Mal hat sie gegreist. From time to time, she made a mistake. Gerät Wörter, was passen nicht für keine jüdische Tochter. She would speak words that were not appropriate for a Jewish woman. Oder übergekehrt Sachen kapor, or she would turn things upside down, laut ihr peurischen Verstand, according to her peasant understanding. Aber Yankov hat als angewiesen mit Guten. But Yankov showed her the right way with friendliness. Ihr klar gemacht dem Tam, to explain to her clearly the reason von jedem Gebot, of every commandment, jeder Aufführung, and every action. Yankov hat eingesehen, für was ist so nützlich zu lernen an andere. Yankov was convinced why it's so important to teach other people. Durch Anweisen Soren, dem rechtfertigen Weg, by showing Sora the proper path, and auf ihre Fragen to answer her questions, verrichten ihre Greisen, to correct her mistakes, seinen ihm allein geworden klar in Yonim. Matters became clear to him, was wollte anders von sie nicht getracht, matters that he otherwise would never have thought about. Ganz oft hat Wanda ihm gefragt Kasches. Quite often, Wanda asked him questions, was es gar auf der Welt nicht da, auf sie keine Verantwortung, which had no answers in our world. Wie Moschel, like, for example, ob Mord is a Verbrecht. If murder is a crime, für was hat der Oberster erlaubt, die Juden zu führen Milchama? Why was it then that the one above God had permitted the Jews to carry on a war? And I feel it's a Titan alta light, and even to kill old folk, und kleine Kinder, and small children. Ob die Völker was seinen weit von Jeden, if those people who are far away from the Jews, wie sie, Wanda, is given in Dorf, as she herself, Wanda, had been in the village, haben keinmal nicht gewusst von der Torah, and had never known anything about the Torah, was ist das their schuld? So then how could it be their fault? Was sie dienen die Getzen, that they worship idols? Wie bald Avram is given a tzaddik, and given that Avraham, our ancestor Abraham, was a righteous man, for was hat ausgejogt Hagarin? Why then did he chase Hagar away? Mit a logel Wasser, with only a flask of water, und mit ihr Sohn Yishmael, along with her son Ishmael. Mehr von als hat sie gefragt, die Kasche. And more than anything else, she asked the question, Von Tzadik v'Ralo, Rasha v'Toivlai. How can it be that a righteous person, it goes bad for him, but an evil person, it's good for him? Der Tzadik was is ihm schlecht, and der Rasha was geht ihm gut. Just a translation of that into Yiddish. Yeah. Yankov hat ihr wieviel Mal geantwortet. Yankov answered her many times, as kann nicht beschädigen die alle Rettenischen, that he himself is not able to resolve all of these puzzles. Aber Sarah hat geteinigt ihm, but Sarah would argue with him, du weißt alles, you know everything.
Right.
Yankov hat sie a Sachmal gehabt gewarnt auf die Dinim von Torah. Yankov warned her many times about the rules of family purity. Hat ihr dermont, as in the Umreine Tag, he had showed her, demonstrated her, that in the days that are considered Umrein, these are the days of menstruation and a little bit afterwards, sie nicht sitzen mit ihm auf ein Bank. She wasn't supposed to sit on the same bench as he. Nicht nehmen kein Shum Chayfetz, was von ihr Hand. He wasn't even supposed to take any object of, Chayfetz is an object of value, but any object at all from her hand. Afil nicht essen mit ihr bei ein Tisch, even not to eat with her at the same table. Seiden soll seine Mechitze zwischen sein Schüssel and ihr Schüssel, unless there was some sort of a barrier between his bowl and hers. Hat sich nicht getort, wegsetzen auf ihr Bett. He wasn't supposed to sit down on her bed, und nicht sie auf seinem, nor should she sit on his. Die Gesimsen von die Betten haben viele sich nicht gedarft anrühren. Now, what is a gesims? It's a railing? Gesims, a cornice, lodge, or shelf. Okay, the shelves of the beds. I guess the beds are sitting on shelves.
The frame, wouldn't that be like the frame?
It could be the frame, yeah.
Yeah.
They shouldn't. They
shouldn't.
They shouldn't even touch.
Right.
Aber das haben gehört zu die Sachen, was Sarah hat vergessen. But this was the sort of thing that Sarah would forget, oder sich gemacht vergessen, or she made herself forget, or she pretended to forget. Sie hat neiert gewollt sich der Nenteren zu ihm. She would rather prefer to come close to him. Sie is capable gewesen, zu laufen zu ihm. She was capable of running up to him, und ihm tonakush, and to kiss him, afile wenn sie is anida, even when she was menstruating. Yankov hat auf ihr angeschrien. Yankov would shout at her, gerät, as jeder andere is verboten, alpi Torah. He said that every touch was forbidden, according to the Torah. Nor sie hat sich das gehalten gering, but she considered that not so important. And Yankov hat gehat der von Zar. And Yankov was a bit anguished about this. Grad Kleinigkeiten hat sie abgeben. It was just the small things that she actually did. She was careful about. Sie hat geteufelt alle Gefäßen. She teufelt all of the cookware. Teufel, and she ran it under running water in a stream, perhaps. Nayert gefragt Shilas wegen Milchiks and Fleischiks. She would Nayert prefer to.
I think it's
rather, or but. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. She would ask questions about milchiks and fleischiks. Now, these things, although were considered important by us, if you want to rank things, nida is much more important in Jewish law than kashrus. Telmo hat sie vergessen.
Nida is like the basic, it's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. These days, maybe not so much, but then, yes.
Oh, that's because of where you live.
Exactly.
There are other places.
Yes. Telmo hat sie vergessen, als sie stumm. Now, sometimes she forgot that she is silent, that she is mute. Und ungeheuben singen, and she would begin to sing. Yankov is geworden a verzitterter. Yankov was all a tremble. Es ist bechlal nicht der Steger, als a jüdische Tochter soll singen. It's altogether not customary that a Jewish woman would sing, weil das derweckt Lust bei Mannsleib. Because according to the Talmud, that arouses lust in men.
Kol Isha.
Kol Isha Erva, yeah.
Yeah, Kol Isha.
Or Kol Isha Erva, yeah. Yankov hat verlangt, sie soll sich losen bei der Tickerin, gollen dem Kopf. Yankov demanded that she should allow herself to have her head shaved by the woman bath attendant. That's the Tickerin. Wie alle andere Weiber, like all the other married women. Nur Sora hat sich gescheren. But Sora herself shaved. She cut her hair, nicht gegolt, and she didn't use a razor. She didn't cut it close. Passenhaar haben oft gestarzt von ihrer Tichel, and locks of hair would often be peeking out from under her kerchief. Yankov hat gebaut a Haus. Yankov built a house. Aber Sora hat schon bei Zeitens geteinet zu ihm in die Nacht. But Sora already in due time had asked him at night, as sie will weg von dem Pilitz. That at night she wants to go out of this Pilitz. It's the name of the town, Pilitze. Wie lang kann sie spielen die Rolle von der Stummer? How long can she play this role of a mute person? Und was wird sein mit dem Kind? And how is it going to be with the child? Sie, Sarah, will nicht soll meinen, als die Mama seine ist stumm. She, Sarah, doesn't want the child to think that his mother is mute. Man darf lernen, a Kind reden. You got to teach a child how to speak. A Mama bräuchte a Kind aus Weisen Liebschaft. And a mother has to show love to her child. So hat in die Nacht gehalten in ein Fragen, Yankov. Here we have in ein. Sarah kept on asking Yankov at night. Yiddish Lashon is showing wie es bedarf zu sein. If her Yiddish speech had reached the right point. Yankov hat ihr jedes Mal versichert. Each time, Yankov assured her, as he hat a peula, that she was making progress. Und as ihr Aussprach wird besser, and that her speech was getting better. Sie hat zedreht Wörter, und der Zusammenstell ist allemal herausgekommen kapoer. She turned words about, and the order of the words was always coming out wrong. Oft hat sie gemacht as so eine Greisen. She was often making such mistakes, as Yankov hat gemusst lachen, that Yankov had to laugh. Es ist genug gewesen, mit soll Herren sie reden, a paar Wörter. It would be enough if anyone would hear her speak a couple words. Man soll wissen, they would know, as sie is a geborene Goya, that she was born non-Jewish. It's as Sarah hat getragen. By the way, my Polish-speaking friends say that you can always, in Poland, tell a Jew speaking Polish because of the accent, that it was very difficult for Jews not to have a standard Polish accent. And he prided himself, my Jewish friend, on having a pure Polish accent. Anyway, apparently it's difficult. Okay, it's as Sarah hat getragen. Now that Sarah was pregnant, hat Yankov gehat noch andere Pradim. Yankov now had other fears. Die Kimpetorin schreit, wenn sie hat wehen. A woman in labor would cry out when she has pains. Es reißen sich telmal heraus von ihr Wörter gegen ihr Willen. And sometimes words would pour out of her throat against her will. Die Kimpet kann einmal aufdecken dem Sod. So, being in labor can sometimes reveal the secret. being in labor, kindbet, by the way, comes from the combination of kind, bet.
Wait a minute.
That's the etymology
Bet.
of kindbet. It's kind,
Ah,
bet.
wow.
Okay. Seiden Sora soll haben dem Keuch zu leiden, Geburt wehen, and zu schweigen.
Ah,
Unless Sarah would have the strength to suffer the pains of birth and to be silent. All right, Moshe, your turn.
oh my God.
I have a question. From my reading limited of Yiddish, there seems to be a difference between a huis and a stub. A stub seems to mean sometimes like a room. Was it always a house?
Well, a stub means a room, but it can also be a kind of a one-room house. When you say a huis, it's already a little bit grander.
Yeah.
And then you get up to a Majontek or a Palaz or a Schloss. But
So,
yeah,
so in fact, a stub is somewhere in between.
yeah, and worse than a stub is a chate.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
seen that, a hut or a hovel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a cottage. I was thinking that it's a
Well, it can
cottage.
also be a cottage, yeah. Although it has a pejorative a dacha is
Uh,
more of a cottage. Or a
yeah,
More
chalupa.
like a hovel.
Yeah, a chalupa is a shack or a shed. Uh, yeah. All right.
Okay. Ja, jenem Tag, wenn Jakob ist weg von Josephus und sich gelost gehen zurück zu dem Dorf, wo hat abgedient 5 Jahre. Yes, on that day when Jacob left Josephus and went back to, sorry, can I, went back to, uh, went back,
where
it's okay, went back to
the village where he
went back to the village where he spent 5 years. Wat gehad ongeladen auf sich a last. He loaded on himself a burden. Was ist geworden mit der Zeit als schwerer, that was getting heavier with the passage of time. Hat sich gehad rein geplontert in ein Netz, was man kennt von sich nicht auswickeln. He had fallen into, he had wandered in an unknowing way into a net that one cannot unravel oneself so easily from it. Wer weiß, who knows, had efter verloren olam haba, he had perhaps lost the world to come, paratzulog, just for some additional supplement. Nor die
No, I think for Tzulog, in
yeah.
addition.
yeah.
sorry, nor
In, in a Tzulog, Tzulog, just in addition.
in addition, okay. Nor die 5 Jahre, was is gewesen, a Knecht über Dank, but the 5 years in which he had been a serf, no, a slave
A
against his will, hat gehad genommen auf sich a Knechtschaft, was verteuern so lang wie wird leben. He had taken on himself an enslavement that would last as long as he would live. Aber Jakob hat nicht beteuert, was hat abgetan, but Jakob didn't regret what he had done. Nu, das Gehinnom ist euch für Menschen. Hell is also for people, nicht für Hund, not for dogs, as hat einmal gehört von a Wasserträger. That's what he had once heard from a water carrier. Aber is definitely he, Jakob, is geworden gestreuchelt in Sinn. He has become entangled in sin, aber hat gehad abgeratet von Götzendienst an Nefesh, but he had saved a soul from idolatry. In die Abenden, in die Evenings, wenn ist gelegen mit Sorgen in die Betten, ausgestellt wie Dalet, in the evenings when he was lying with Sarah in the beds, lying put out like a dullard, at right angles to each other, presumably. Die Stube ist nicht gewesen genug lang, die Betten sollen stehen langweis eins dem anderen. The room was not long enough that the beds should lie lengthwise, one next to the other. Hat das Portvolk gekonnt murmeln und flüstern schon und sei seinen nicht geworden mit. The couple were able to murmur and whisper for hours on end without we're getting tired. Jakob hat von ihr größer Liebschaft. Jakob hat gelernt mit Soren. Jakob studied with Sora, besucht Musser, Pavitz mit Misholim. He told her moral stories spiced with anecdotes, with fables. Sie hat gerät von ihr größter Liebschaft zu ihm. She spoke about her great love for him. Telmal haben sie sich der Mond die Zeiten, wenn ist gesessen Sommer in Stall. Many times they spoke about, they reminded themselves about the times when he was sitting in summer in the stable when sie Wanda and she Wanda hat him gebracht essen, brought food for him. Sie ist als gewesen weit onhaft. It was all far away without any substance, wie a cholm, like a dream. Sie ist schwer gewesen, Soren zu glauben, als das Dorf ist noch ergens voran und als Leben dort ihr Schwester Bascha. It was difficult for Sarah to believe that the village is still existing and living there is her sister Basha, their brother Antek, when Efshar euch die Mutter, and perhaps the mother is still alive. Jakob hat gesagt, als Leute den seien die Kräuvim ihrer mehr nicht kein Kräuvim. Jakob told her that according to Jewish law, the her relatives are no longer her relatives. A geir is wie a neugeborener Mensch. A convert is like a newborn person mit a neuer neshama, with a new soul. Sie, Sora, is wie die Mutter Chava. She, Sarah, is like the mother Eve, was is geboren von Adam's rib, who was formed from Adam's rib. Sie hat nicht gehabt kein andere Mishpocha achutz im Yaakov. She had no other family aside from himself, Yaakov. Sarah hat so getan. Sarah said, aber los Tatala is noch als mein Tatala, but my father is still my dear father. When Mitamol sie genommen schluchzen, and after a while she started to sob, auf dem Gorel von Jan Pschick, was hat sich abgemattert alle Jahren, und jetzt liegt ergens vergraben zwischen Getzendiener. She was sobbing about the lot of Jan Pschick, who had toiled all his years, and now he lies somewhere buried among the idol worshippers. Sie hat so getan zu Jakob. She said to Jakob, "Was die müssen mitnehmen in Gan Eden. You'll have to take him with you to heaven. On him will ich nicht gehen. I will not go without you." Okay, that's a good place for me